Harivom. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste friends. Welcome to session 148 of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. In today's class, we will wind up our study of chapter 18, the Moksha Sanyasa Yoga, with a recap of verses from 50 to 78. Srimati Shamala Shetty and Ms. Shreya Shetty are going to chant Madhurashtaka later at the end of class. Now, I request Dr. Hegde sir to give an introduction to the day's class before we begin the recap. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. With today's class, we come to the conclusion of the 2-year-old project, Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse. In the last 2 years, we've been able to put almost 400 videos on YouTube, predominantly on the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedanta topics. The Gita topics were initially a 20-week summary. Right now, another summary is going on for the School of Ancient Wisdom. So each of the chapters have been summarized in one class. The 2-year-old project is concluding today, Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse. As we were studying, we thought we will do a simultaneous recap by a new series called Disha, Discovery of Inner Strength and Happiness through the Gita, and that will also conclude in another 1.5 months or so. With that, we come to a glorious conclusion of our Bhagavad Gita studies, and we're extremely grateful to our gurus and to God for this opportunity. Tat padam darshitam yena tasmai shri gurave namah. If you read the Mahabharata, occasionally you will come in certain sections like Vyada Gita and certain other chapters where you will see verses very much like the Bhagavad Gita. What you will study or what you will come to note is, although the Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata, the verses of the Bhagavad Gita are so extraordinary, so poetic, so beautiful. That is why Adi Shankara felt this has to be studied as a separate text altogether. And we are so fortunate to study so many of these verses. Now that we have come to the conclusion of the Gita study, my suggestion for each one of you is to collect 10, 12, 15 of your favorite verses of the Bhagavad Gita and see how you can chant it every day with specific references. I will do my own exercise of those verses of the Bhagavad Gita which have touched me and maybe certain aspects of which I would like to meditate on. For example, this verse, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogata, the emphasis is on Atman evatmana tushtaha. That means, can I be so complete? Can I be so purna with myself? That is the whole aim of the Bhagavad Gita. Again, another very favorite verse of mine, and this is the natural fallout if the Bhagavad Gita has an impact on you, is that you will be able to see anybody and everybody, rich or poor, powerful or weak, important or not so important, whether they belong to your religion or your country or any other religion or any other country. Atma pammena sarvatra samam pashyati yo Arjuna. Sukham vayadi vagdukam sa yogi param. Krishna says, such a person is a great yogi who is able to see everyone just like he would treat himself. And that is the beautiful understanding of the Bhagavad Gita. Another verse I love is, Mai sarvam idam protam sutre manigana eva. As your true nature, you are all pervasive. While I function through the body and have a sense of limitation, my real nature is what? My sarvam idam protam. I'm able to see myself in anything and everything because I pervade everything. Another wonderful verse for me Bahunam Janmanam Ante. After so many janmas, Jnanavan Mam Prapadyante. Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. Vasudeva. You will know there is one chapter in the Bhagavad Gita called Purushottama. And there we have to discover that the Purushottama, or the best person, is none other the Atma, that is myself. Here it is the discovery. After so many lives, you discover that you are Vasudeva. And Vasudeva can be said as I am. Vasate means am, existent. Deva means conscious, I. Whenever you say I am, I represents consciousness, am represents existence. And with the help of this verse understanding, we have to declare, I am Vasudeva. And after so many lives, I've been able to discover, I am Atma Brahma, Mahavakya. In the 8th chapter, there is a question by Arjuna. Who is this Adi Yajna and where is he located? And Sri Krishna replies, Adi Yajno Ahameva. I am the karma paladata who is watching your motive, your intentions, your thought, and who is placed so intimately within all of us, and therefore is in the best position to decide what is the best karma, the phala of my karmas. Of course, everyone's favorite is Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yad Karoshi Yadasnashi, and so on. Even before this detailed study of the Bhagavad Gita, if there was one verse of the Gita which I had loved since my childhood, is this. Tulya nindastu sthiramauni santushto yena kenachit aniketaha sthiramatihi bhakti mam in priyo naraha. Krishna's definition of a person who is a para bhakta, who has what is samatvam, who is not affected by praise or by criticism, and who is the same whether alone or aniketa. I love this verse also, where Sri Krishna, another Mahavakya, Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Sri Krishna is available in all of us as the consciousness principle, not only in me, but in everyone. Niyam yat tat pravakshami yad jnatva amrutam ashnute. Sri Krishna said, I will teach you that, knowing which you become immortal. Now, we cannot become immortal, but by knowing which you realize you have always been that. Immortality is my very nature. Another, my favorite after the studying of the Gita, and when you are privileged to be able to, whenever you get to present a particular verse, when you have spent a long time meditating on that verse, whatever that verse is, it becomes your favorite verse. And this verse I would like to meditate, be with me most of the time, because through this verse, I'm able to see Bhagwan everywhere. Through all my sense organs are revealing none other than Bhagwan. Sarvendriya gunabhasam sarvendriya vivarjitam asaktam sarva britshaiva nirgunam gunabhoktricha. Sometimes you are at loss of adjectives and superlatives. And one of the most superlative Mahavakya verses, which describe our true nature, the Atma within us, Upadrashta, the proximate witness, Anumanta, who allows everything to happen, Bharta, the one who's sustaining the whole universe. Believe it? Mayeva sakalam jatam may sarvam pratishtitam. The consciousness in me is the one who's lending existence to the whole world. Bhokta, the experiencer, Maheshwara, the great Lord, Paramatma iti, chapyukto dehesmin purusha paraha. This is what Sri Krishna says, and this is what Swamiji has allowed us to interpret and declare those Mahavakyas as our true nature. The conclusion of the entire Bhagavad Gita in the 15th chapter, Yomam eva asammodaha janati purushottama. Have you understood who is this Purushottama? Have you discovered that the Atma within you is Purushottama? Finally, the last 3 verses, and this is these 2 verses will be studied, revised again today. Man mana bhava. Keep me in your mind. Mad bhakto bhava. Be my devotee. Mad yaji bhava. Whatever you do, do as an offering to me. Ma namaskuru. You are so dear to me, Sri Krishna says. You will come to me. This verse has to be understood very clearly as Sarva Dharma Adharma Parityagya. How can you give up both dharma and adharma? It is only possible if you log on to your higher nature and see that you are akarta abhokta. The moment you see yourself as Atma, I am akarta, I am abhokta. So there is no punya, there is no papa. So this is the understanding given to us by Swami Paramarthananda on Sarva Dharman Parityagya Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja, to be able to declare the one. And Sri Krishna says, Moksha is your birthright. Don't be sorrowful. And finally, the Bhagavad Gita, we will study that again today, reaches the climax in these words of Sanjaya. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yatra Partho Dhanodhara Tatra Shri Vijaya Bhutir Dhruva Niti Matir Mam. Dear friends, as we come to the conclusion of this landmark work, with a deep sense of gratefulness to my entire team who has made this possible, I would like to have one opportunity where all of us get to meet those of us who are online who have never met before. At the beginning, I would like you to be in touch with us through our mail ID. Param Vedanta AOP. AOP stands for Association of Persons at gmail.com. I'll repeat, paramvedanta@gmail.com. And if you could send us a mail, we will be in touch with you and we will let you know about what we are going to do in future. And hopefully some of you who are really interested could join us in a Zoom class where we will tell us why we are studying what we are going to study in future, like Kathopanishad, Panchadashi, and so on. With this introduction, I would like to conclude my presentation and I would like to tell all my fellow speakers that I will not be coming in between so that you would have 1 minute more and you can present the summary of the 18th chapter at a relatively relaxed pace. The opening speaker for today will be Arjuna. Arjuna, please.
Hari Om, thank you. Bhagwan, first line. Bhagwan Krishna in verses 50 to 55 condenses Jnana Yoga, having explained it extensively in the earlier chapters. Basically, Jnana Yoga has 3 aspects: Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. And in these 5 verses, the Lord is emphasizing Nididhyasanam, also known as Vedantic meditation. Next slide, please. So let us now look at this shloka. Siddhi prapto yatha brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samase naiva kaunteya nishtha jnanasya ya para. Siddhi praptaha. A seeker attains siddhi, purity of mind, or jnana yogyata, which is a preparatory qualification, by karma yoga. Then, having come to a stage of receptiveness, saha brahma apnoti, there comes the understanding of Brahma through Jnana Yoga, that Brahman is not different from me, that fulfillment or purnatvam does not come from outside, but comes from within. This is a very startling revelation, but with this knowledge, a person can become a Jnana Nishtha through Jnana Yoga, which means that the whole perception of thinking and of being of the person changes, so that the Vedantic knowledge or Jnana surfaces in every situation and in every thought in life. Next slide, please. The Lord, dealing with Nididhyasanam, says this: you have to study the Vedanta very clearly after having gone through Shravanam. Buddhaya Vishuddhaya. One should gain knowledge of the real nature and have no doubts about it. One should have an intellect which does not doubt this knowledge at all. The purpose of Nididhyasanam is to assimilate the knowledge obtained through Shravanam, which means dwelling upon the teaching, so that the knowledge goes into the personality of the person completely. There are many forms of Nididhyasanam, like repeatedly hearing, repeated reading, discussion, etc. But everywhere the emphasis is on the mind dwelling on this teaching. Secondly, There has to be a value to this teaching. The mind must value it and say, this is very, very important to me. After that, Shabdadin Vishayam Svatva. The sense organs should be turned away from the outer world using Pratyahara, Pranayama, all those enunciated by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras. And then Raga Dvesha Vyudasya Cha. Handling the problem of Raga Dvesha, that is attachment and dislikes, which bring the mind down to the world in general. It is impossible not to have Raga Dvesha, likes and dislikes. But a person must transcend these because this is a very, very important preparatory step. Next slide, please. So continuing with the preparation for Jnana Yoga, Bhagavan says, Vivikta Sevi, choose a place which has minimum disturbance and to be alone. It is very important to be alone, to deal with oneself all alone. Then Laghvasi, eating in a regulated, disciplined manner. The next important thing is Yata Vakaya Manasaha, learn to master all the sense organs, like refraining from unnecessary speech, etc. Manasam, withdraw the mind from the external world. And Vairagya Samupashritaha, become detached from the world like a monk, for that time at least, not identifying oneself as father, mother, sister, brother, etc. Now, having a free mind and a free intellect, be committed to Vedantic meditation, dwelling on the Shastras, dwelling on the very all-important mantra, Aham Brahmasmi. Next slide, please. 53. Bhagavan says that, okay, during the process of Vedantic meditation, there will be, of course, emotional disturbances. And he has listed some here which we have to overcome. The first one to drop is ahankaram, the strong identification with the body. Second, balam, holding on to power and position which has been obtained in this world. Darpam, arrogance at having accomplished things in this world. Fourth is kamam, desire, endless materialistic desires. And fifth, krodha, which comes about due to excessive desire. All this comes under the heading Asuri Sampat, which has been dealt with in the chapter 16. So Bhagavan says, Parigraham, slowly relinquish the ownership thought of all these possessions. Nirmama, it is not mine anymore. So these are the preparations required. And such a person is fit to merge into Brahman. Next slide, please. So the process of Nididhyasanam results in Jnana Nishtha or Atma Nishtha. Bhagavan says so much so that in any situation in life, this assimilated knowledge comes up and enables one to deal with it. And what are the indications of Jnana Nishtha? The first of it is a quiet mind, Prasannatma. Not only that, Na Shochati, a mind which is not pained or overcome, not disturbed. Na Kankshati, which has a sense of fulfillment, freedom from feeling insufficient, and a freedom from desires that create bondage. Next slide, please. Mamaha Sarveshu Bhuteshu, looking on everything with a non-judgmental mind and going beyond Raga and Dvesha. This is the highest form of bhakti which a person can reach. Param Bhaktim Labhate, the highest form of bhakti, Advaita Bhakti. Now, Swami Paramarthananda has often mentioned FIR. F stands for frequency of disturbances of the mind. I is intensity, and the R is return to equanimity. So this is a good way to judge how prepared you are for this Jnana Nishtha. Next slide, please. Verse 55, Bhagavan completes the topic of Vedantic meditation here. This is a very gradual process, doesn't happen overnight, obviously. And this verse summarizes Nididhyasanam completely. Bhagavan says that by this practice, and here Bhagavan uses the word bhakti, which is a word that can be used for any spiritual sadhana. By this bhakti, in the form of Vedantic meditation, a person gets Ishvara Jnana Nishtha, meaning the knowledge that one gets converted into Nishtha, and then there is the final assimilation, the last step of the journey, where such a person knows the higher nature, Nirguna Jnanam, that which transcends time, space, and division. Mam Vishate, such a person enters or merges into Brahman or consciousness. Now, it's not like going from one room to another entering. It is a state of moving, like a dreamer merges into a waking state. Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In the introduction to the verses which are from 56 to 62, as Dr. Arjuna has already talked about, Krishna is introducing the topic of bhakti and its phalam. So somebody who is a Brahma Jignyasi, or who wants to know the real nature of ourselves or our real nature, he has to obtain the highest knowledge, which can be fulfilled only by Shravanam, Mananam, which you have to obtain from a Guru or Shastra. We call it Guru Shastra Upadesha. But after listening and after introspecting, what is more important is practice of that acquired knowledge, which is called as nididhyasanam. But this process of nididhyasanam is a very slow process and it requires time. It also requires some kind of vipassana or a daily routine or practice. When it is done with a certain bhava, it becomes bhakti. And as said, bhakti can be used for any spiritual sadhana. Karmayoga is also a kind of bhakti. Vedantic Shravanam is also a kind of bhakti. It is a type of yajna. We call it the Gyan Yajna. And of course, the Vedantic meditation is also a kind of bhakti. Next slide, please. Now, what is the phalam or the result of this bhakti? By this bhakti, which is in the form of Vedantic meditation, Krishna says, Mam Abhijanati. A person gets Ishvara Jnana Nishtha, which is the final assimilation of the teaching. This Jnani, who has now assimilated the teaching, he understands both the relative and absolute. The relative, of course, which is limited, and also the absolute, which transcends space and time. You can call it both Saguna and Nirguna. In the 55th verse, as discussed, Krishna said that once he knows, he enters me immediately. He becomes me only. Next slide, please. Coming to the 56th verse, Krishna Sarva Karmani Apisada Kurvana Mat Vipashraya Mat Prasadat Avapnoti Shashwatam Padam Abhyayam. Next slide, please. Doing all actions ever depending on me, one attains the eternal and changeless goal by my grace. Now, Krishna is advising that if you do all your action which are depending on me, is devoted to me as a kind of a bhakti, one attains the eternal and changeless goal by my grace. So the grace of Lord comes on him. Next slide, please. From this verse, Krishna again explains Karma Yoga. Now he says, what is the attitude of Karma Yoga, which is also a bhakti yogi, bhakti. You may be a Karma Yogi, but you cannot forget Ishvara Bhakti. That is important. And again, it emphasizes the value of Ishvara Arpana Bhava of your karma and Ishvara Prasad Bhava of your karma. And Krishna said, Mad Vipashraya. First take shelter in me. Vipashraya means shelter, Charanam, refuge, which means take refuge in my teachings, which is the Krishna's teaching, which he is talking about. Next slide, please. Sarva karman api kurvana. Whatever karmas you do, which are laukika, sansarik, or vaibhika, offer as naivedyam. Naivedyam means prasadam. Offer it to me as naivedyam to Lord, or as an offering to the Lord. What will happen as a consequence of that? Mat prasadat Ishvara prasadat apnoti. You will attain your goal. And what is your goal? Sashvatam padam. Eternal goal of moksha you will obtain. Next slide, please. 57th verse says, Chetasa sarva karmari mai sannasya mat paraha buddhi yogam yupashritya mat chittaha satatam bhava. Next slide, please. Which means keeping me at the supreme goal and mentally dedicating all actions to me by resorting to karmayoga, remain within your mind fixed on me all the time. So whenever you are doing any karma, if your mind is in connect with the Lord all the time, whatever karma you do, and you have that Ishvara Prasada Bhava, Ishvara Arpana Bhava, you will be a karma yogi and you will get your supreme goal. Next slide, please. This is a very, very important. Mat prasa san buddhi yogam upashrita. Taking to karma yoga. Mat chittaha satatam bhava. Your chitta should be connected to me satatam, eternally, always on me. Never forget me. I should never get out of your mind. Satatam means always. Mat chitta bhava. Dedicate all actions and results to me, which is what is Ishvara Arpana Bhava and Ishvara Prasada Bhava. Next slide, please. Coming to the 58th verse. Mat chittaha sarva durgani mat prasadat tarishashi atachetam tvam ahankarat na shoshyashi vinashyati. Next slide, please. Which means, with your mind fixed on me, you shall cross all the obstacles which will come on your way, and that will be my grace. But if you don't listen to that, due to your egoism, vinishyati, shoshyasi vinashyasi, that means you will perish. So there is a warning given here. Next slide, please. So Krishna is advising through his teaching, if one keeps him in his mind, mat chitta, by his grace, mat prasada, by his grace, all obstacles will be removed. But in the second line, he's giving a warning also. You do not follow the requirement of the karma yoga, which is athana shoshyache. Not listen to your ahankara. Why would you not listen? No, this is I am doing all these things. That's the ahankara. And that is why it's very, very important that even when you succeed, you should, as soon as you succeed, ahankara will come into you. But at that moment, you should thank God for that, thank Lord for that, thank Krishna for that, that because of his grace, I am able to do this. And if you don't do it, you will lead to spiritual destruction. You will lose the benefit of this human birth. What is the aim of this human birth? Moksha prapti. You only have that mind-body complex. You only have the thinking faculty which is situated in your brain, which can help you to understand this. And that is why you will lose that opportunity if you don't use it in this life. Next slide, please. Coming to 59, yat ahankaram ashritya na yotse idimanyase mithya eshaha vyavasayah te prakritihi tvam niyokshitachyati. Krishna is saying that if you stick to your egoism and you will not fight, here is the description is given to Krishna, to Arjuna, that such a resolve of Arjuna will not work. You are wanting to take Sanyasa and run away from this war. This will not work because your nature will compel you to do it. What is your nature? You are a Kshatriya. If you run away, you will probably run away, but you will have to come back to do what is your real nature. Your guna will take over you. Your rajas will take over you. Of course, you are mixed with sattva, and of course, Arjuna, person like an Arjuna, doesn't have any tamas, but it will take over and you will have to go into that direction. Next slide, please. Krishna explains further from the previous shloka, yari ahankaram ashritya. If you hold on to your ahankara and refuse to fight, which is opposite of your prakriti or your guna, due to your adamant nature, ashritya ahankaram, sticking to your egoism, the resolve of you will be in vain. It will be mithya. Nature will compel compel. Prakriti niyokshati, because it is designed like that. The Rajasic nature will not allow you to remain quiet. So here Prakriti means Swabhava, and Swabhava means Rajasic nature, which will compel you to fight this war, even if you take Sanyasa and run away from here. Next slide, please. Coming to 60th verse. Swabhavajena kaunteya nibaddha swena karmana kartum cha ikshasi yat mohat karishyasi avashah apitat. Next slide, please. O Arjuna, bound by your own duty, which is born out of your nature, you will helplessly do that which you do not want to do because of your delusion. What it means is, next slide, Swena karmana nibaddha. Everybody is bound by his own type of karma. A particular type of karma or activity is subhavajena. It is determined by your subhava. And if one tries to oppose his subhava, because of what? Because of attachment and moha, we will not succeed. You'll ultimately take that action which is according to your subhava, which is avashah api. There's a word you call avasha. You cannot control this. Avasha means it is not in your vasha. Vasha means control. The nature will manifest in any of the ashrama. Even a grahastha will manifest his vasha. Even a sannyasi will, if it has got a lot of subhava of rajas in him, he will become an active controller of the ashrama. That is what the sannyasi will do, even if he says sannyasi. Next slide, please. Ishvaraha sarvabhutanam ritadeshe Arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra arunani mayaya. Very interesting how they bring the understanding about a yantra or a machine here. O Arjuna, next slide, please. O Arjuna, the Lord resides in the heart of all beings, revolving all the beings through Maya, as though they are mounted on a machine. Next slide, please. Ishvaraha sarvabhutanam hridese tishtati. Krishna says, Lord resides in the heart of all living beings. Sakshi chaitanya rupena Ishvaraha tishtati. Lord sits in the enlivening principles in all beings. Sarvabhutani brahmayan. Lord energizes the body, which moves as if a machine is made to move. Yantra rudhani mayaya. One should not confuse here, as one may think that we are only puppets in the hands of Lord. One has to understand that our free will decides how we act. Lord is only an enlivening principles. Coming to the last verse. Tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prakshasi shashvatam. Next slide, please. O Arjuna, surrender to him alone wholeheartedly. By his grace, you shall attain peace and eternal abode. Next slide, please. The Lord which resides in your heart, saranam gaccha tameva. Surrender to him alone. Sarva bhavena, wholeheartedly. All the bhavas should go there. By offering all karmas to that Lord, by his anugraha, tat prasada, you will attain permanent glory. Sashvatam sthanam prapasyasi. Permanent glory, which is lead to moksha prapti. And in the next verse, Krishna concludes by saying that this Jnanam, which have imparted, now he has imparted, is the most secret one. And now do as you like. Hari Om.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. After concluding a summary on Karma Yoga in the previous verses, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that this knowledge I've given you so far is the greatest secret. Guhyat Guhyataram Jnanam. And he does not want to order or command Arjuna. Therefore, he says, Etat Vimrishya Yasheshana. Arjuna, analyze and introspect on this teaching and decide according to your need. Yat Tichyasi Tatha Kuru. But then in the next verse, Krishna continues and says, listen once again to my Paramam Vacha, my supreme words. So why does Krishna want to repeat again? He says, because you are dear to me and this is beneficial for you. So in the next two verses, that is in the 65th and the 66th verse, Krishna summarizes the Gita once again. The 65th verse is almost a repetition of the 34th verse of the 9th chapter. In this verse, Krishna summarizes karma yoga by saying, leading an active God-centric lifestyle in which I contribute to the society is karma yoga. So when Ishvara Arpana Bhava and Prasada Buddhi is one's daily lifestyle, then this will bring about transformation in our perspective. How? God is no more someone distant, but becomes an integral part of our life and later becomes the ultimate goal also. So Karma Yoga will shift a person from Manda Bhakta to Madhyama Bhakta and finally Uttama Bhakta. Therefore, Krishna says, Manmana Bhava, keep me in your mind. Mat Bhakta Bhava, develop devotion towards me. Madhyaji Bhava, convert your regular life into worship. Mam Namaskuru, surrender unto me. And if you follow these instructions, then Mam Eva Eshyasi, you will reach me. That I promise you. Satyam Te Pratigne. Why? Because you are dear to me, Arjuna. Therefore, make this your daily or our daily lifestyle. This is Karma Yoga. Now, in the 66th verse, Krishna then concludes his teaching here. Since it is the final teaching verse, it is also called the Charama Shloka of the Gita. Here, Krishna gives a Jnana Yoga summary, but he does not directly mention Jnanam anywhere in this verse. So without a clear understanding, this verse can be subject to different interpretations. Let's clear the confusion first. In the first line, Krishna says, Sarva dharmam parityagya. The literal translation is, renounce all dharma. That's a contradictory statement. Dharma means virtues, ethics, and morals. And throughout the Gita, Krishna has talked about the importance of dharma. In fact, he told in the 4th chapter, his avatara is for the purpose of upholding and promoting dharma. Then in the second part of the first line also causes confusion, where he says, Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Here the literal translation means, you approach only me as your refuge or shelter. This statement will also lead to confusion or misinterpretation. People will think that only Krishna is the ultimate goal or the refuge, and therefore do not worship any other god. To explain this, Adi Shankaracharya comes to our rescue and brings out the Jnana Yoga meaning in this verse. He says, the word dharma in this context must include adharma also. So it is sarva dharma adharma parityagya. So dharma includes all the punya karma and adharma includes all the papa karma. Therefore, sarva dharman parityagya is renounce all actions, both punya and papa karmas. But how can a living being renounce all actions? Earlier, Krishna himself had said that no living being can give up all actions totally. But we have to remember an important teaching, and that is all the karmas or actions belong to the body-mind complex alone. And as long as I am identified with the body-mind complex, the deha abhimana, then all the actions, the karmas of the body-mind complex will be my karmas. Therefore, if you have to give up all the karmas, then the only way is to give up this notion that I am the body and the mind. But I can give up deha abhimana only if I know that I am someone different from this deha. So who am I? I am Atma Chaitanya, the consciousness principle, which is akarta and abhokta. This is Atma Jnanam. Therefore, Sarva Dharman Parityagya means gaining the knowledge of this Jivatma Svarupam. We gain the knowledge that no karma belongs to me and all the karma belongs to the body-mind complex. This is the first stage of Jnana Yoga, the Jivatma Svarupa Jnanam, which is the Tvam Padartha Jnanam. The second stage of Jnana Yoga is Paramatma Aikya Jnanam, which we will see in the statement made by Krishna, Mam Ekam Sharanam Praja. Because of this statement, this verse is also called the Sharanagati Shloka. Krishna says, Mam Vraja, approach me. Now, which Krishna is referred to here? Ekarupa, Anekarupa, or Arupa Ishvara? In this context, Krishna is referring to Arupa Ishvara, the highest nature of God, Nirguna Brahma, the all-pervading Paramatma. And that is why Krishna uses an adjective Ekam, which means without a second, the only one, Advitya. Mam Ekam Vraja therefore means approach the all-pervading Paramatma. So how will Jivatma approach the all-pervading Paramatma? On analysis, the use of the word approach or the word to reach is also wrong, because one can approach someone who is far away from you and one has to travel to reach someone. So the words reaching and approach indicates that we have a false notion. The false notion that the Lord is different and away from me. Therefore, reaching Paramatma is dropping this false notion that I am different and away from God. And how do we drop these false notions? We drop it through the right knowledge. Therefore, the right knowledge is that between Jivatma and Paramatma, there is neither a division nor a distance. This knowledge is called Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Jnanam. Therefore, what is the ultimate Sharanagati, the surrender? It is nothing but Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Jnanam, by which I drop my false notions. This Jnanam is called as a Mahavakya Jnanam. Gaining the knowledge Tattvamasi and converting it into Aham Brahmasmi. And what is the benefit of this knowledge, the Jnana Phalam? Krishna says, Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Ishyami. I shall release you from all the papams. This includes both papa and punyam. Why? Because if papam is the iron shackle, then punyam is the golden shackle. Both will lead to birth death cycles and keep you within samsara. Therefore, if you want moksha, you have to transcend both punyam and papam. Therefore, sarva dharman parityagya, this jnana yoga knowledge is the ultimate means of liberation. And with this final summary, Krishna concludes the entire Gita teaching, which he had started from the 11th verse of the 2nd chapter. Hari Om. Thank you.
Namaste, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. In the previous verses, 65, 66, Madam Lord Krishna has given the final summary of the Gita. Verse 65 summarizes the Karma Yoga Sadhana, and 66th verse summarizes Jnana Yoga Sadhana. And with this, actual teaching of the Gita is over. From 67th verse onwards, we get few concluding verses. Sampradaya Vidihi, the rules for teaching the Gita and the learning of the Gita, glory of the teacher, Shishya, Gita teaching, and finally, Upasammara, Sanjaya's conclusion. In the next slide, Lord Krishna talks about 4 qualifications required for Gita study. If these 4 qualifications are there, Gita study will be highly beneficial. What are the 4 qualifications? These were presented in Tattva Bodha as Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti. But here, Krishna presents it in a different form. First is tapas, discipline, spiritual or religious discipline. Second qualification is bhakti, reverence, devotion to God and Guru. Third is sushrusha, deep interest in the study of the Gita, desire for knowledge, jnana. Even though Bhrigu was Varuna's son, he had to ask for the knowledge, and Varuna did not give until he asked, emphasizing the desire to study. So only when there is a desire, you will be able to study. The 4th qualification is anusuya, a non-critical mind. Never approach the scriptures with a motive of criticizing or finding fault with the scriptures. The Gita study should not be imparted to anyone who does not have these 4 qualifications, and definitely never to an atheistic person. In the next slide, Krishna is glorifying 3 types of people. Though everyone is dearer to the Lord, there are three groups of people dearer to Lord Krishna. First is Bhagavad Gita teacher. Next is Gita student. And the third is a casual Gita listener. One who just comes and sits in the class, whether he understands or not. Of these three, who is the dearest one? Lord Krishna says, a Gita teacher is very, very dear to me because he is doing the work which Krishna wants to do. In fact, Krishna took avatara for spreading and reviving the Vedic wisdom. And since all the Gita Acharyas are assisting Lord Krishna in the preservation and propagation of Sanatana Dharma, which is the aim of the Lord, perpetuation of teaching is Dharma, harmony, peace. And therefore, Gita Acharya is doing the work which is dearest to Lord Krishna. Therefore, a Gita teacher will attain liberation, moksha. He will attain Jivan Mukti, Videha Mukti. In the next slide, Shishya Stuti or Shishya Mahima is discussed. Lord Krishna divides a student into two categories. One is a qualified, serious student of the Gita, a committed student, Uttama Shishya. And second type is unprepared, casual student, inferior Shishya. A Uttama Shishya does Adhyayanam, a serious, systematic study of the Gita, while an unqualified student does Shravanam, a casual hearing. And Krishna says here, both types of students are great and both are going to get great results. The qualified student will get moksha and the casual student will get swarga. In the Gita class, the Jnana Agni is kindled, and therefore this is called Jnana Yajna, in which the oblation is ignorance. Our ignorance is offered, ignorance-based confusions, ahankara, ego is offered, and every student practices Jnana Yajna. Therefore, Krishna says, Aham Ishtaha, means I am worshipped. It is an invisible form of worship because materials are not offered, but the invisible ego is offered. And for practicing the greatest yajna, the phalam is moksha. A casual student who does not have all the qualifications, they may come to Gita for actually some practical worldly benefits. But even then, he has Shraddha, Anusuya. He has reverence for the Gita and the Lord. He knows the importance of the Gita. Therefore, Krishna says, this person will be freed from all the papa and he will get Swarga. In the next slide, Lord Krishna asks Arjuna, as a serious student, whether Arjuna has destroyed his self-ignorance. Arjuna says, Krishna, you're a great teacher and the communication has been successful and both my delusion and ignorance is gone. Darkness can go only on the arrival of light, arrival of knowledge. And then Arjuna says that he has gained the knowledge by grace of Lord Krishna, Guru Anugraha. Now Arjuna does not have any doubt whether fighting is dharma or adharma. He says that he will fight the righteous war, even though the duty happens to be unpleasant. And when this was heard, Krishna is in great ananda that his efforts are fructified. Coming to the next slide, in conclusions, we understand how the light of knowledge, the Gita, is important. Wherever the light of Gita falls, the people will be benefited either as moksha or swarga. All will be benefited by Bhagavad Gita. That is the importance of the great Bhagavad Gita. Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Krishna's Bhagavad Gita teaching reaches a logical conclusion when the transformed Arjuna finally surrenders and renounces his ego, as we see in verse 73. With Krishna's mission accomplished and Arjuna's doubts cleared, both of them go into silent mode as Sanjaya takes over to put the curtains down to this great conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. Sanjaya, known for impartial introspection, is relaying to King Dhritarashtra the entire discourse between Krishna and Arjuna. Sanjaya is obviously thrilled to watch the Vishwarupa Darshana and is a blessed recipient of this Moksha Shastra taught by the Lord himself along with Arjuna. Thus he proceeds as we go to the next slide. Sanjaya uvacha ityaham vasudevasya parthasya cha mahatmanaha samvadamimam ashrausham adbhutam romaharshanam. Having witnessed the ultimate enlightenment bestowed on Arjuna by Lord Krishna, Sanjaya feels immense joy within himself. Sanjaya says, Hey Rajan, iti, in this manner, imam samvadam aham ashrausham. I heard this beautiful sacred dialogue which took place between Vasudeva and Partha. Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, and Partha is Arjuna. And what type of Arjuna and Vasudeva? Mahatmanaha, the great ones, the glorious ones. And what type of dialogue? Adbhutam, there are no words to describe it. It is wonder of all wonders. And also Roma Harshanam, it is so wonderful that even my physical body feels the thrill and my hairs on the body are standing on end. Horripilation taking place to indicate the extent of his feelings. Sanjaya continues as we go to the next slide. Vyasa prasadat shrutavan. I could hear this dialogue only because of Vyasacharya, who blessed me with Divya Chakshu. Therefore, Shrutavan, I could hear Etat Param Guhyam, this supremely secret knowledge, which is not easily available. All types of courses are available all over the world, but Brahma Vidya, the blissful wisdom, is the rarest teaching. It is secret and sacred. The Upanishad says, Shravanayabhihi bahubihi yona labhyaha. Many people are yearning for this teaching, and unfortunately, many may not get this knowledge because of some obstacle or the other. Therefore, Sanjaya says, I was blessed enough to get this rare and sacred teaching from Sakshat Bhagavan himself, Yogeshwara Krishna. Etat param guhyam yogam. Yoga here is the teaching, and Sakshat Kathayataha, a direct teaching from the Lord himself. Thus, Sanjaya is overjoyed. As we see in the next slide, verse 76. Rajan samsmritya samvadamimam adbhutam keshavarjunayof punyam hrishyami cha muhurmuhu. Sanjaya says, Hey Dhritarashtra, when I look back and think of my good fortune, I'm extremely ecstatic about that. Muhuhu muhuhu hrishyami. I feel the ecstasy, extreme happiness when I look back to the teaching that I received. Samsmritya is repeatedly recalling, churning, and contemplating upon what I saw and heard. Imam adbhutam punyam samvadam. I recall this wonderful sacred dialogue. The more I think of it, the more I feel thrilled. Keshavarjuna yoho, between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. Aham hrishyami, I rejoice like people reminiscing good memories. Then Sanjaya singles out the 11th chapter as a very special one, which we see in the slide. Hey Rajan, when I look back into the entire teaching, what strikes my mind and what is well etched in my mind is Harehe Atyadbhutam Rupam, the wonderful Vishwarupam of the Lord, who is the limitless one, consisting of all forms and names. That alone comes to my mind. And when I think of this Vishwarupam, Mahan Vismayahame, I am wonderstruck, I am stunned, I am thrilled, I am stupefied, I am overwhelmed. I have no words to describe. He uses the word Vismayaha, meaning Ashcharyam. Hrishyamicha punaha punaha. I bring that vision to my mind and I rejoice again and again. Thus, Sanjaya has expressed his feeling of joy and wonderment. Now, he concludes the whole Gita teaching in the last verse, as we see in the next slide. Yatra Yogeshwarah Krishnaha, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutihi, Dhruvani Tirmatirmama. Sanjaya says, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishnaha, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha. Wherever there is Sri Krishna, Lord of all yogas, as the Brahma Vidya Guru, and wherever there is Arjuna, the wielder of the bow, Tatra there will be Shrihi, wealth, Vijayaha, success, Bhutihi, prosperity, and Nitihi, justice or fairness. All of these will be permanently granted. Iti me matihi. This is my verdict, he says. Some commentators draw attention to the concluding word of the Gita, that is mama, and the opening word of the first chapter, dharma. Between these two words, the garland of the 700 verses is hung together in its immortal beauty. And so these commentators summarize the meaning of the Gita as mama dharma, my dharma. Thus, the entire Bhagavad Gita teaching concludes. Om Tatsaditi Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Moksha Sanyasa Yogo Nama Ashtadashodhyayaha. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat. With deep gratitude and humility, we, the team of Param Vedanta, offer our pranams to the lotus feet of Swami Paramarthananda ji. The journey of learning the teachings of Bhagavad Gita has been a wonderful one. This study of verse by verse could be completed with the grace of the Lord. Gita is not only for studying, but for living. Study of Gita is not complete by just attending the classes. As it is said, Acharyat padamadatte padam shishya swamedaya padam sab brahmacharibhyaha padam kala kramena cha. By attending class, you gather 1/4 of knowledge, that is Shravanam. Next 1/4 you gather by revising, that is Mananam. The third quarter is gathered by discussion or teaching, that is Nididhyasanam. The last quarter you will gather only by conscious living, that is living in accordance with the Gita teaching as prescribed by Lord Krishna. Studying is called Ritam and following is called Satyam. Ritam and Satyam both are important for any scriptural study, that is Gnana Nishtha. So let us read Gita, let us study Gita, let us teach Gita, let us spread Gita, and finally let us live Gita. May Lord Krishna bless us all. Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Adharam madhuram vadanam madhuram nayanam madhuram hasitam madhuram hridayam madhuram gamanam madhuram madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram vachanam madhuram charitam madhuram vasanam madhuram valitam madhuram chalitam madhuram Brahmitam madhuram madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram Venur madhuro renur madhurah panir madhurah padau madhurau nrityam madhuram Sakhyam madhuram madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram गीतं मधुरं पीतं मधुरं भुक्तं मधुरं सुप्तं मधुरं रूपं मधुरं तिलकं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं करणं मधुरं चरणं मधुरं हरणं मधुरं स्मरणं मधुरं वमितं मधुरं शमितं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं गीता मधुर गुञ्जा मधुरा माला मधुरा यमुना मधुरा वीची मधुरा सलिलं मधुरं कमलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं गोपी मधुरा लीला मधुरा युक्तं मधुरं भुक्तं मधुरं दृष्टं मधुरं शिष्टं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं गोपा मधुरा गावो मधुरा यष्टिर्मधुरा सृष्टिर्मधुरा दलितं मधुरं फलितं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् इति श्रीमद्वल्लभाचार्य विरचितं मधुराष्टकं सम्पूर्णम्.
Thank you, Shamla, for a divine chanting and all the speakers for a wonderful class. Thank you, friends, for being with us throughout this great journey, which comes to a close today. On Monday, 22nd May 2023, let us log in for a session 60 of Disha for the discovery of inner strength and happiness at 6:45 p.m. In this episode of Disha, we will begin study of chapter 14. With this, let us conclude today's session with our usual Shanti mantra. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.